The skyline of Warsaw is the signature of the emerging Polish powerhouse. This boomtown has come a long way. Western visitors to Warsaw in the 1980s didn't encounter shining glass towers, but a sad, drab and grey city of crumbling concrete blocks. And within living memory, the entire city had been in ruins. 70 years ago last month, the Red Army marched into a Warsaw that Hitler's forces had all but annihilated. The population had been killed or deported. 85% of the buildings were destroyed. The devastation posed an enormous challenge to the communist rulers. But it also presented them with an opportunity to legitimize their power. Warsaw's buildings and streetscapes would reflect the ruling political order. While the order has changed, the architectural expression of politics continues to this day. Warsaw's picture-perfect old town is a magnet for tourists, but its ancient appearance is deceptive. Two schools of architecture vied for influence with the post-war government. One wanted to rebuild pre-war Warsaw. The other wanted a new city, based on the theories of modernists like Le Corbusier and Walter Gropius. In the old town, the historicists won out, supported by popular enthusiasm. Crowds of volunteers helped with the rebuilding. The new rulers could say, "Trust us. We're not the kind of communists who want to throw out all that is old." But this patriotic conceit of restoring an old world was just the compliment paid to history by an ideology bent on creating an entirely new society, including through its architecture. Stalin had very clear preferences in architecture. The official body of Polish architects knew how to read the signals from Moscow. We must create an architecture suitable for our times, understandable to the working man, magnificent but simple. And so it was that just as Poland was starting to rebuild its capital in earnest, the only style that mattered was socialist realism. Today, socialist realist landmarks, such as the Palace of Culture, constitute solid reminders of Poland's years under Stalinist rule. But after Stalin's death, the prohibitive cost of such monumentalism could not be justified. By the mid-1950s, modernism was back in vogue. Polish modernists gained international renown, but the visual excitement of their best constructions was increasingly drowned out by the depressing, shoddy uniformity which Western visitors came to associate with Europe behind the Iron Curtain. For Czesław Miłosz, the Polish poet, essayist, and Nobel laureate, greyness and monotony was an essential feature of communist dictatorship. The union of color and harmony with fear is as difficult to imagine as brilliant plumage on birds living in the northern tundras. Miłosz's description certainly captures what I remember from visiting family in Warsaw in the 1980s. It was grey, dull, and drab. The 1990 economic reforms changed everything overnight. What had once been black and white was now full of gloss and colour. No wonder then that the 1990s were bursting with architectural expressions of capitalist freedom. But capitalism brought its own problems. Even the best communist-era modernist constructions faced threats of demolition instead of restoration. The strong tradition of urban planning was forgotten.
Overall planning in the city results in a very chaotic development of the city, both in the visual sense and the functional sense. So the functions between neighboring zones or even single lots, single properties are not coordinated, and also the height of the buildings, the way they look, the whole aesthetic aspect of the city got out of control.
But something is changing. Warsawians are taking a more nuanced view, both of the more distant communist past and the more recent period of cowboy capitalism. Not everything before 1989 was bad, they say. And not everything from the 1990s was good. Here, like many other places, there is a growing preference for the urban life over suburban comfort. And more now see the need for urban planning. Some 1990s buildings are already being pulled down to be replaced with better constructions. And even the most dramatic and traumatic past is becoming a source of inspiration. 70 years on from Warsaw's destruction, the city feels like it's still deciding how to rebuild itself. But perhaps Warsawians are now treating the past less as baggage to be thrown overboard than as ballast to steady their course into the future. Martin Sandbu, Financial Times, Warsaw.